Today we have the privilege of being joined by lobbyist Gary Milliken, who has a lot of experience as a lobbyist in the legislature. Glad to have him here to share some thoughts with us.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Gary, welcome. Perhaps you can tell us about your background as a lobbyist and how you got involved in the HOA industry.
In 1975, I was the Assistant Sergeant at Arms in the Nevada State Senate, which was a great learning experience back in those days. And then from that, I got into lobbying. I picked up a couple clients. During the 80s, I did a little bit of lobbying, but I also did a lot of political campaign work. And then about late 80s, full-time ever since then. I got into the HOA work because of another lobbyist. I used to spend a lot of time in Commerce and Labor in the State Senate, Senator Townsend's committee. So there were some LAC members that used to come up a lot for the HOA hearings, but you had no lobbyists. So a lot of the lobbyists came to me and he said, I recommended that they talk to you because you're in Randolph's committee almost every day, and that's all the HOA material. And I said, yeah, I've listened to a lot of those discussions. So I talked to the LAC people, and we worked out an arrangement, and I've been doing it for LAC ever since then.
Instantly you became the HOA lobbying expert, right?
Yes, I did.
And we've been beneficiaries ever since.
And I've learned a lot ever since then, too.
I know that Gary was very instrumental, at least almost teaching me. I almost felt like he had to babysit me because he knows where you need to be, when to be there, and whom you're going to address. And I know how much I appreciated it more because I just felt like I was a fish out of water, and he was there to help us a lot with that.
Well, I love politics, and listening to Gary talk about politics, I always feel like I'm getting an inside scoop, so we appreciate that.
I try to keep you informed.
Well, Gary, maybe you can share with our viewers kind of what a lobbyist does, how they go about their business, how they advocate for their clients.
Well, a lobbyist is usually retained mainly by associations or by a specific company or a specific industry such as gaming or HOA. I'm there to represent their interest. In recent sessions, I probably spend more time educating than anything else because topics are becoming more complicated. With term limits, now you're going to see in 2011, you'll probably be looking at 19 to 25 new members in the legislature. And a lot of them, they come from different backgrounds, but they don't know anything about lien laws. They really don't know HOA laws. So I really spend a lot of my time educating them and also educating the client. I think as John mentioned, clients have one perspective of what they think the legislature should be, and you just have to say, no, here's what we have to do, and here's the process we need to follow, and that's what you do. So I kind of guide the client through the process, but I also make the legislators aware of what the client interests are and try to explain that what those interests are, and then get to the point where if they have questions, they know to come to me and say, okay, we've got a question about this. Can you get a hold of your client, or can you get a hold of someone to explain this issue to me?
And that's where relationships really do come in. I mean, it's all based on relationships.
It's all based on relationships.
That's a value.
And that's where you see term limits is going to make a big difference. Because some of the new people elected in 2011, by 2015, they will be chairman of committees. So they will have been there 2 sessions, and now they will be in leadership. So big changes because of that. And again, it puts a lot more pressure on me and on the different associations to educate these people. And during the interim, that's what I spend a lot of time with now. When you have new clients, new legislators, you try to spend some time with them and say, okay, here's what we're trying to do. So that when the 2011 session starts, I can go to them and say, okay, remember when I met with you in August, or I met with you in September? This is what we talked about. So I need to follow through with you on that. So
it's great. I mean, and like I said, in my experience, I've been up to the legislature many times since about 1995. I know I used to work with another law firm, and Michael Buckley was always involved in the sessions and did a lot of drafting. But since about 95, I've been involved. But I really felt like having Gary there was helpful. Just who to talk to and things like that. Gary, maybe you can talk a little about and educate our viewers on how does a bill get passed. In fact, most of them don't realize that those bills are getting drafted right now,
yes.
and the session doesn't begin yet. But maybe you can tell them how these bills get passed.
Yes, because again, a lot of bills come from individuals. They will go to a Senator Copening or go to an assembly person and say, I've got a problem, can you help me with it? So a legislator has to request a bill draft. Either a legislator or a governmental entity request a bill draft. When it gets to the legislature, let's take Senator Copening as an example. She will introduce the bill on the floor of the Senate. It is then referred to a committee, and that reference is based upon the subject matter of the bill. So like HOA, if it's an HOA bill, it will now go to judiciary. So that bill goes to judiciary. This is where the power of the chairman comes in, because then the chairman of the Judiciary Committee in the Senate will make a determination, A, if he wants to hear that bill, because sometimes he might not want to hear the bill. Then he will set up a hearing date for it. Usually the chairman will try to do all the same type bills at one hearing. So let's say you have 3 HOA bills. He will try to do all 3 HOA bills at one hearing. That way people that are interested can all be there for it instead of doing 3 different topics. He'll try to do one topic to do that. He has hearings. Eventually that bill will be voted in or out of that committee. The problem we have today is you have a 120-day session. And this really, really limits what you can do, because there's a deadline. If that bill's not passed out of that committee by a certain date, it dies. So you try to get that bill out. If it's passed out of Senate Judiciary, it then goes to the Senate floor, where 21 senators will vote on it. You need to get a majority of those senators to vote yes on your bill. If it concerns money, then it takes 2/3 of those senators to vote for that bill. From the Senate, it then goes to the Assembly, and it's the same process again. Referred to Assembly Judiciary, you go through the same hearing process. Now, it might be amended. The Assembly Judiciary Committee say, okay, that's a great idea, but we want to add something to it. So they add an amendment to it. It then goes to the Assembly floor and gets voted out of that. Now it comes back to the Senate, and the Senate Judiciary Committee can concur or not concur with that bill. Now, if they do not concur, now we've got to go to a meeting between the 2 Assembly committees to say, okay, what do you want to do? And a lot of bills die there because you cannot reach an agreement. So, if you look at, most there be 1,300 bills introduced this time. A lot of those bills never pass.
Yeah, it's still amazing, the process, the detail, and the time. To our viewers that want to get involved, that want to be more of a participant in the legislative process, could you give them any pointers or suggestions?
Well, the Nevada legislature has a really good website. I think like 2 years ago, I think it was named the best website of any state legislature. Go to the Nevada legislative website. On there, it lists all the meetings. It gives you the itinerary of all the meetings. Most of those meetings are video conferenced. You can watch them on the computer. You can go down to the Grant Sawyer building. If you're living in Clark County, go down to the Grant Sawyer building, watch them there, and testify. You can testify on any bill that's being heard. You just have to, simply a matter of going in, sign in your name. If you're speaking, check yes or no, and you certainly have the right to speak on any bill you want to. But it is work on your part. You're going to have to go to the website. You're going to have to track the bills And there's a listing of all the bills. So you can start with AB 1 all the way through to AB 862 and see which one will affect HOAs or which one will affect you. And like I said, if it's not teleconference, it'll still be on the computer.
What's interesting is I know that in years past I've usually done testifying from Grant Sawyer building, but Gary did educate me quite a bit and said you really not need to be here in where it's really at, and it was quite an experience.
Yeah. But if you can't go to Carson, that's your way to go.
Well, Gary, thanks so much for joining us and sharing some insights on a lobbyist and what they do and how they help everyone. When we return, we'll answer a question that has been submitted by one of our viewers, so stay with us and we'll get right back.